The city is really vibrant. It's seen huge developments both on the waterfront, in the city centre. It's got a fantastic Edwardian core. We've got a World Heritage Site in Liverpool on the waterfront, Capital of Culture next year, 2008. The retail offer is getting better, the housing offer is getting better, a huge amount of pride in the city of residents. The city in its heyday was 800,000 in terms of population, so people living in the city. Today there are only 450,000. Industrial industries have declined, the industries on the docks have declined.
It has changed a lot.
Desolate now, it's a wasteland, feels awful.
You're frightened to go out for long periods because you don't know what you're going back to.
Very isolated. As time's gone on and people have moved out, kids were coming in, smashing windows, setting fire to the houses that were empty. It's not a nice place now for the children to be.
Well, it's just being run down.
I can't let the children out of the night because of that reason.
You're living in the street, which is like a ghost town. It's not very nice. And it's a bit demoralising, to be honest.
All the people, all the neighbours and everything, it was family community.
When I first came and I started school, I was 5 and the area used to be fabulous.
It was a good area. We used to have at that particular time, we used to have the street parties for whatever the reason was, you know, and all that kind of stuff.
Within some of the city centres of the north, there's been some market breakdown in which particularly old properties have failed to be reinvested in, and the people who currently live in them do not have the economic ability to reinvest, and those areas are in decline. The Housing Market Renewal Initiative was a project set up by the government to invest specifically in those areas.
The city and its partners have embarked on a 15-year programme in good faith with the goodwill of the residents supporting us, so it's hugely important that that commitment is maintained by governments.
60 years in August I was born, next door to the house I live in now.
We've lived in this particular house for about 22 years.
66 years.
I came out of the army when I was 25, 1946. And my parents had bought this house then, and I came home to this. So I've lived there really till I went out in 2001. I moved because of the elements in the area made it impossible for to maintain your ownership of the house. It was rather a vicious circle of antisocial behaviour, which, to my opinion anyway, took each house out on a one-to-one base. And I was the last tenant in the place.
It was smashing, but about 20 years ago it started to go down, but mainly because a lot of big houses and people were buying them and letting them off, and they weren't particularly bothered to do their end as long as they were getting the rent, and they were coming in for a couple of months and then so they were migrating. There was not an awful lot of... The steadiness in Anfield seemed to drift, and then we started going downhill.
Anfield needs intervention for a number of reasons. Back in 1999, there was a huge amount of research taken place. We were looking at areas that had high level of vacancies, houses that were in disrepair, and poor neighbourhoods.
The partnership working on the scheme has been an engagement between the community, the local authority and its other development partners such as the RSLs, private developers and the football club.
Partnership is central to this programme. It's impossible for any one organisation to effect the transformational change that we want to make.
Apart from the problems associated with the housing, there are other indices of deprivation in the area. There's high unemployment, there's high criminality, antisocial behaviour.
Within the Anfield Breckfield HMRI area, I mean, Arena is the lead association, and what that actually means is that we take the lead amongst all the RSLs that work in that area, so that there's a coordinated approach, but there's one voice that speaks for all the social landlords in and around that area. That means that we work very closely with the HMRI team from New Heartland and Liverpool City Council, who are providing the resources within the area, but also we work very, very closely with the community. And in some ways, whilst Anfield Breckfield has many issues, it's also got many strengths, and one of the particular strengths that it has is it has a very strong community voice, and that helps both ourselves and the HMRI team, because it's clear what the community wants to achieve, and it helps us to define our objectives much better.
5 years ago, a number of people in the community managed to get hold of a report. Resident groups looked through that report and did not like what was being proposed by Liverpool City Council and Liverpool Football Club. This then led to the establishment and development of the Anfield Breckfield Partnership Forum. The forum is a multi-agency forum that consists of local resident and tenant groups, also representatives from local voluntary and community sector. We've also established 2 subgroups, the Housing and Physical Strategy subgroup and the Neighbourhood Management subgroup.
What the steering group's done is brought the people together. There's more communication, people know what's going on in the area, there's not decisions made without them being involved.
A good example of this is when the football club wanted to take over Lake Tinsley and Gilman Street as a car park in the short term while they built a new stadium. The Housing Strategy Group actually made that decision. That the currently cleared land would be the only area that they would be allowed to use. Subsequently, the football club then agreed that they wouldn't, at a later date, apply for any planning permission for use of the rest of the area once it was cleared.
So the community is the single biggest and most important entity and right the way through this whole process.
The community don't get involved. We can't turn around and say that the area is going to be at all sustainable because they need to have a say in it. It's fundamental.
It's a mess, but it's not as much a mess as it was 10 years ago. We are getting to grips with this, but I say we are getting to grips. All the groups are the steering group, the people, the volunteers, the paid workers. We're all trying as well best to get this area lifted. Trying to get about the private landlords to get over their properties and do their properties up. We're trying to get people to behave themselves and advise them, cajole them, force them to try and keep the place tidy. And I think we're starting to see the light now. We're starting to see a bit of light in the tunnel.
5,000 properties have been considered within the area. The greater number of those properties have been identified for refurbishment and retention. However, 1,800 properties have been identified for clearance as the worst properties of the area, and there is to be a reprovision of 1,300 new builds in the area.
The blue properties on this plan are those that are to be demolished. The council have already acquired 550 of these, and the remainder of the properties are going to be acquired in phasing order. The phasing starts at Robson Street, moves down to Oakfield, then across towards the V Streets, and then from Gilman right down to Sleepers Hill. Residents have been told of this phasing in a series of exhibitions and resident association meetings.
I live in Venmore Street. It's a 4-bedroom house. I wouldn't be able to buy anything like the house I've got now for the money that they're offering to me to move out of the house.
Because first we're told 12 months, then we're told 18, and then so on. So no one really knows exactly when it's happening. But when it's done, it's supposed to be going to be gorgeous. But we've got to live in this mess for 9 years first.
What I want to know is how much longer and why wasn't it kept in the sections like it was supposed to be?
There's stuff going on behind the scenes that, you know, we're trying to push things forward if we can. We know it's hard, we know that you can't just produce money pots from everywhere, but we are trying to bring these 7 to 9 years, 9 to 11 years, we're trying to bring that forward or make it as easy as we can through the neighbourhood management, through the council, through the steering groups, through the different groups involved. And the only thing we can do is just keep pushing and pushing and pushing and try to get these things sorted.
Friends of mine who lived in Lake Street being put out of the homes. They had nice little homes there. They're only 2 up, 2 downs with back extensions with bathrooms, but they were nice little houses and people were happy there. They were only made unhappy when some of them became vacant, left open, vandalised, set on fire, and then the area brought to its knees. It's not fair.
A programme like this could be seen just as a physical regeneration programme, just about demolishing housing, refurbishing them, building new ones. And it's really important that people don't see it that way. It is about the people who live in the community. It is about the way they feel about the community. It's about their memories of their lives here. And most importantly, it's about keeping them in the community.
The other key element that's been brought into the area is that we have a designated developer, which is Keep Moat. And they've been brought in by the HMRI and Liverpool City Council to provide all the affordable housing and market rented housing for the area reinvestment.
When we first arrived, residents did have a lot of scepticism, and I think that's historic. There's been a lot of false starts regarding regeneration in this area, and half the battle is really to convince them that this one is for real. We are here to deliver, and we're here for the long term. The first phase of the regeneration project was a development just off Dobson Street on a vacant piece of land that was owned by the City Council. The engagement started with really looking at people's aspirations as to what they wanted for the whole area, what kind of facilities they were looking for, what kind of housing met their needs, and what they saw as being the long-term future. We do have to remember that as important as it is to cater for the local residents, we're hoping to increase the number of people moving into the area, so we have to bear in mind other people's aspirations as well and consider the reasons as to why people aren't currently choosing to live in Anfield. Take-up has been fantastic as far as we're concerned. I think 53% of the properties have been sold to residents of the future clearance area, and 88% of the site has been sold to existing Liverpool residents. So from our point of view, it's very encouraging, and it's given us the confidence that there definitely is a housing market to be developed in this area. The Robson Street development is one which we've taken through in exactly the same way. The community have been involved at various stages of its development. That's more critical, I think, to the success of the whole scheme, because there's a very high proportion of social housing on there to facilitate further decant opportunities. We provide some aspirational housing, and we do that in partnership with the Arena Housing Association as well, to enable not just private tenants but rented accommodation and shared ownership.
If you can tell me where in Liverpool I can buy a house similar to the one I'm living in at the moment for £65,000, and it's a decent area, I'll move to it.
So do you have a mortgage for this?
No, we put all our savings, what we had, into the house, so that's it now. Yeah.
And how did you feel when you had to move?
Well, I was a bit upset, but then, as I say, you know, we knew we had to move, so this was it. But we're with a lot of good neighbours here. That's one thing, you know.
And is there anything positive come out of the move?
Well, my husband's very happy, you know, he is. There's no back entries. You haven't got loads running along your entry walls and all that.
Would you rather stay there in the conditions that you're in or be here?
No way, no way. He's happier here than, you know, down there. Yeah.
I've rented this house now for nearly 11 years. Ideally, I'd stay for the rest of my life. This is the first home that my children have lived in. I'd have it like that till they're grown up and moved out themselves and made that choice for themselves. I love this house. I did love the house. I used to love the area, as I said, and know everyone around here. It is a shame that it's come to this. But saying that, the help and support that I am getting to move out and be able to have my own house with the children, that's a bonus, that's great. The access to home ownership, that is for first-time buyers, that covers the legal fees and the costs in the beginning, which it's great for the likes of myself. Then you've got the home buyers package, that's 25% of my mortgage, which is being paid for. I don't have to pay anything back until 5 years, 5 years time. As I said, once again, that's going to be great for the likes of me, first-time buyers, that doesn't earn a great wage, and I've looked into getting a mortgage on my own for the full amount of the property. It's impossible.
I won't get a mortgage. There's no way I'll get a mortgage. There's no way I'll get a mortgage. There's not enough money coming into the house to be able to afford a mortgage, even if it's topped up by £65,000, £75,000. I mean, I've seen houses, just 2 bedrooms. The cheapest starting rate at the moment is something like £110,000, £120,000 for a small 2-bedroomed house.
Owner-occupiers, say for example, who are living in a property whose property goes up for sale, they may not be eligible or entitled to get a mortgage, but they don't want to lose the money that they've got from the sale of their property. So shared ownership's a fairly good option, because what they can then do is, by putting the amount of money that they've actually received, they can put it into the new house and they're paying a minimal rent then.
I own this house outright. Yeah? Why should I share it with anybody else? Why should I share what I own with somebody else? I've paid all the years into this house, and everybody that sells the houses, unless they've got negative equity, obviously, make a profit on the house, which is a great thing because it helps them to move on to the next one.
I think when you look at the house prices at the moment in Anfield and Breckfield, there's definitely an upturn in the prices. When probably about 4 years ago, I had my house valued, if not less than 4 years ago. I had it valued for personal reasons, and it was valued then at £10,500. That's for a 4-bedroom house with cellar, fully double glazed, central heated. Within a few months of that, it was declared part of a renewal area and a regeneration area, and the value then went up. And then one of my neighbours ended up putting her house on the market and sold her property for £78,000.
They say market value, but they can say anything is market value. What's the market value of a house?
I think you judge market value based on the value of the properties and the quality of the properties that are around you at the time. And the market will increase. I believe that, with the new builds and with the improvements in the area, then house prices will go up, and that should be reflected. Those market values should be reflected in when HMRI and the city come to purchase the properties off people.
Once the market value is agreed, then residents are also offered 10% home loss on top of that, provided they've been living in the property for a year as their main residence. They are also given all of their removal expenses paid. This basically is anything that it costs at all to move from one property to another.
Our role as a home ownership advisory officer is to assist the homeowner and try and sustain home ownership.
The equity loan was 35% of the cost of the house. So when I leave, my wife leaves, we've got to repay that money back. It's a lovely property. We're both made up with it, but I had to, get a mortgage out to help me to fulfil the price sort of thing, I didn't want to move at all from the district, as I'd lived there 47 years. So it was a long, long time, I thought there was a chance. At first we were told the houses were staying up, and there was other districts of the neighbourhood coming down before ours, and we were getting made into a old pensioners' village. That was the understanding, and then it was decided that something changed, and they decided to make us phase 1 and 2.
Right, one of the questions that people have asked is why is it taking so long for the design and the retirement village to come and start to be developed? That's a good question, and what we've done is we tried to secure funding from the Housing Corporation last year. That would have been April 2006. When we were unsuccessful, we spent the last 12 months reviewing the design and the funding that Arena can put into the scheme. By utilising some of our reserves, then we feel the scheme can be delivered with the right care provider on site. That's a role for the City Council that we're working with, and when that's resolved, we'll start looking to the detailed design for the scheme, which will leave a planning application to be made later on this year in 2007.
When you're dealing with people's homes in the way that we are, there are always people who won't want to move or won't want their house to be knocked down or are happy with the lives that they lead. And what we need to do is to be sensitive to that and understand that the perspective that those people are articulating, putting forward, But what we have to do at the end of the day is to work with the majority of residents, and the majority of residents are behind the programme and behind the plans, and that's because they've been involved in creating them.
I've lived in the area all my life. I'd like to see it get done up. I'd like to see it all get done up. I mean, if you want a good example, go to Valley Road and look from the top down, the way the houses have all been cleaned up and everything like that. Now, I remember that road before the war because I used to live inside Domingo Vale with my grandmother. And we used to come up there, coming from the park and everywhere else like that. And I'll tell you what, that road now takes me right back to when I was 9 years of age, the way it is now.
The City Council have actually improved the frontages of properties to make the overall area look more aesthetically attractive, to again encourage the residents who live in the area to stay, and any future people who are going to looking to move into the area to move and to come in and to set up families here.
They're doing 1 or 2 jobs in the house for me under the grant, and basically that's to make it much easier while we're here until we move. And I'm just painting outside. I've painted the back. When you come out here, I'll see I've made. If you took a photograph from there and looked across the
yeah,
the difference, I've tried to make it, while I'm here, take the depression off the place, because if I didn't, you just go, you really go down, so you've got to sort of keep ahead and try to look ahead and hoping that something will come better, which I think it will do, because the area is getting run down and it's going down and down and down, so you've got to try and keep ahead of it and not let it get you down, basically that's what it is. So that's what I've done. I've painted the outside and tried to make it as comfortable as possible while I'm here, hoping I'm not here all that long.
Well, I think the regeneration's a good thing because they're trying to rebuild Liverpool to a much nicer and safer environment.
Initially, the Rockfield estate was actually scheduled for demolition or planned demolition. However, due to community concerns and the community voice, this was actually avoided and the community was listened to.
I moved into the area about 22 years ago. Bought a house, been there ever since. That's in Rockfield Road. At the time when I moved in, there was a lot of work going on in the area. The grants were being paid out then, people were rebuilding the houses. Looked like a real good place to invest in. But that quickly started to go downhill. When it really come to a head was about 7-8 years ago. And I think here we are today, where we're looking at the plans for the refurbishment of the whole area. And it's wonderful, wonderful.
I work with Arena Housing in partnership on 2 different projects. First of all, we work together on a project called the Anfield Plaza Challenge, which was an inter-house competition here at the Academy, where groups of about 5 students in each team put together business ideas for the proposed Anfield Plaza. It's going to be a mixed retail and leisure development. of hotels, restaurants, shops, that type of stuff. And it's all about attract all the visitors that come in for the football to spend more money, create jobs, create businesses for the North Liverpool area really. So both of these students were involved in developing business ideas in collaboration with the football club and Arena Housing.
We had a retail centre, then over across the road we had a
Mother's Day spa, wasn't it?
A Mother's Day spa where the mothers could relax.
And then they had dropped the kids off next door at Tots and Teens is what we called it, and I think we decided that kids could have a part-time job there. We found out that the plaza was going to be built, and the first thing that came into our heads when we thought, what should we put in, was something for the kids.
Liverpool is blessed with many beautiful parks. It has more parks than any city outside of London, and in North Liverpool, Stanley Park is incredibly important. Fortunately, because of the regeneration projects around the new stadium, the park will be restored. The City Council has received significant grants to restore this park to its former glory. This end of the park is really dedicated to sport, so there'll be new multi-use all-weather games areas on here. The football pitches have been already restored by the City Council, and there are hundreds of children who play football on here every weekend. The conservatory, as you can see behind us, is in very poor condition. It's been derelict for many years. We've been working with English Heritage to make sure that this is a completely usable venue for functions. It will sit up to 300 people, and also as a cafe.
I think the regeneration's good, because especially from my experience, because I was living Herschel Street, just off Robson Street, and it wasn't exactly the nicest place. And then the regeneration happened, and we got moved up to the Lansdowne Place, which is just off Mere Lane, new houses and stuff like that, and it's just a better place to live.
My wife and I are made up. My wife's highly delighted that we have moved, like, so, you know, all in all, you've got to admit we have benefited in a modern ways than one.
And I'll give you a laugh now. When we first got married, he wanted a house with a garden, and he waited 52 years to get a house with a garden. But as I say, I wouldn't go back there. I do miss the family, that's it.
If I could have one wish, is that these houses be put right again. That the houses at the back that have been left derelict perhaps be knocked down, and we'd be given a garden area either at the front or across the road at the back. And I think other than that, if they're not going to do that for us, then at least give us a decent price for the houses, something that we can spend and buy a reasonably good house in a reasonably good area.
You learn to adjust, and this is what it's all about. And I think the people in this area too will have to learn to adjust. If they adjust satisfactorily, then it will be a success. And I really pray that it will be a success after the amount of work that's gone into bringing it about.
I'd like to give a message to the residents to say, hang on in there, support us, work with us. We'll continue to work with you. We're on this journey together. We all knew it wasn't going to be a short-term programme, and now we're sort of a third of the way in, and just to hang on in there and support us, and together we'll deliver truly sustainable communities where people want to live, stay and work.